Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Make It Rain show. As your trusted real estate professional, I always like to bring you resources because I want to be the trusted advisor of your choice, but I can't do everything. So today I have three amazing professionals that are in the assisted living space. And welcome, Alex, Rese, and Graham. I'm so excited to have you. And we're going to deep dive today into what an assisted living placement advisor is, because I have never heard of that before. I didn't even know that profession existed. How ignorant, right? And I met Rese recently on a transaction, and I'm like, how fun and informative would it be for my clients to learn about what you do and how you can help them? We all have seniors in our life, may it be friends, may it be family members, or even ourselves one day. So it's always good to stay on top of things and to learn how that works. So why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
Hi there, I'm Rese Garson, owner of Assisted Living Locators of the Space and Treasure Coast, along with my partner, Graham Garson, and husband.
I'm Alex Escobar. I am the owner of Assisted Living Locators down in Broward and Miami-Dade County.
And I'm Graham Garson, co-owner of Assisted Living Locators, the Space and Treasure Coast. And I tend to work some of the northern areas all the way up to Daytona.
Okay, so tell us, what is a senior placement professional and what's the biggest misconception people have about your work?
What we do is we find a good fit between what the seniors need and what they're looking for, and it's very customized. So we do placement. We work with all assisted living facilities, big and small. We work with those who are licensed, and it's for independent living 55 plus, assisted living, memory care, and respite care. A lot of people don't know, like yourself, don't know that we exist, and they look online, they look for resources, and there are so many from which to choose. So where we come in is we provide our local expertise and help them find the right fit based on their criteria. So their budget, geographical preference, lifestyle preference, care needs. We help them tour, we help them transition. Misconceptions?
No cost to the seniors.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one big misconception that I get all the time is the tendency that people think that because they're working with one of us, the communities are going to charge them more. Our fees are actually structured by law. They cannot do that. And our role pretty much is exactly like yours, Kathrin. We focus on finding that perfect future home for that senior, based on a lot of factors like Garson mentioned. And we collect our fees from the seller, in this point being the community, not the buyer, in this point being the future resident.
Well, thanks for bringing that up because I really love that. So your service, I mean, yes, you get paid, but to the people using you is essentially no charge to them, right?
That's correct. That's
That is
correct.
wonderful. Okay.
And it's not just the placement, but also resources, additional resources. So we work with senior partners for, like yourself, for selling, moving, attorneys, etc.
Wonderful. Yeah, we're going to dive into that in a second. So Graham, you mentioned on our prep call that placing seniors is just like real estate with a healthcare component. Can you elaborate on that and what are the key similarities?
Well, all right. So it's truly very similar. So basically what we do is we go out and we tour with people. We try to narrow down the field. We take the 300 plus properties in the community, in the area that we actually serve, and narrow that down to a much more manageable level. It's a very personalized, customized service. So we will go out and tour with them to make sure that they get all their questions answered, as well as they ask all the questions that they intended to. Obviously in the real estate market, we've all had the client that goes out there and walks out of the building and goes, I forgot to ask that question. We're there to help, just like a realtor is, to make sure that they get that question answered. Also to give them the best information possible about the area and the community itself. Sometimes there's some of those behind the scenes things that somebody who's internal would know, that if you just walked into the community, you could see this beautiful, bright, shiny penny that looks absolutely wonderful, but there are workings going on behind the scenes that may not be as desirable to someone. It doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, but it may mean it's not something that they would be looking for or something that could make them change their mind on.
Yeah, Okay, wonderful. So my next question is, when a family first comes to you, so what's the first step? Is there a checklist of needs like care, budget, location? How do you help them prioritize those needs?
We do an assessment and we find out what their preferences are, what their care needs are. So we dive a little bit into the medical background to find out exactly what those care needs are. The communities we work with have different licensures. So you can have a standard license, you can have a limited nursing license, limited mental health license, or an extended congregate care license, which can provide some skilled nursing within their community. So we have to find out what those care needs are to ensure a good fit. And then we ask their personal preferences, what they did in the past, what their hobbies are, because the hobbies that they have now, their lifestyle right now, may not resemble what they did in the past, but knowing what they did in the past can kind of bring that to light. A lot of people like to look back on what they did previously. Um, and what else? Just their wants and needs. Do they need personalized care? Do they want a bigger community? Are they social? Do they need, a smaller community with one-on-one? So really, we assess them in person, we assess them over the phone, find out what their activities of daily living is. Can they walk? How mobile are they? Where are they at in their level of functioning?
Alex, you want to add something to that?
Sure. And just like you, Kathrin, we're given a budget to work with. We also dig a little bit further and ask additional questions in terms of them being a veteran or any long-term care policies that they might have, or any other family and friends that could possibly help out, or Medicaid as well, kind of finding those additional fundings. And just like you again, they also give us a kind of a list of their needs and wants. So there's that big difference of, everybody wants, as much as they can get within that budget. So, you know what that's like. And, very similar roles, like Graham said earlier, again, it's a real estate with that healthcare component to it, in terms of all those different licenses and what their medical needs are.
100%. Okay. So how many facilities do you usually show a family, and what's the risk of showing too many, and what's your strategy to prevent clients from getting overwhelmed?
So we try not to show more than 5 because it does kind of blend together.
My God, that's like me. I show 3 to 5 homes.
Exactly. So all the homes have the similar features, right? You have a kitchen, a living room, bedroom, bathroom. Same for the assisted livings, right? So they have their rental spaces, their own apartment. They have the dining room. They have all of the additional features, bistro and whatever amenities. So it can blend together. That's why we show them. That's why we really narrow down to find out what those needs are and really show them the ones that meet the criteria. There's no point in showing anything outside of their budget, anything that they're not interested in. And really, that first assessment is the biggest part of it to really focus in on those communities, making sure that they're looking at the right fit. But we do show a range, high and low, and big and small, so that they really have a true comparison to make an informed decision.
I think the great thing is also what you had told me is you preview all the facilities, you schedule visits, regular visits, not just once. So you know what's going on, anything new that comes up, any new facility, you tour it first before you send the clients there. So that is something that I always tell my clients. If you need to look at 10, 20 houses, you're really working with a realtor that doesn't do their homework. And I think it's the same in your profession. You know your inventory, you know what's going on. So you don't need to waste your client's time in dragging them through 20 facilities.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Layouts of things can also make a difference too. You may have a person who's got a budget who really wants a 1-bedroom, but can't really afford what a 1-bedroom's going for. But there might be a studio that is virtually a 1-bedroom. It's got a bit of a separation where they can have their own living room, they can have their own bedroom space, even though it is still a studio apartment. So knowing how to make that work, very similarly to saying, okay, the layout of this house is going to fit what they're asking for a lot better than another house would.
So what I hear you saying is sometimes the client doesn't know what they want and you guide them in the right direction.
We do as much as possible, and it's unbiased. And one thing to note too is all of the assisted living communities do include meals, depending on what they're going into, independent versus an independent means a higher functioning senior with less needs. can be 3 meals or 2 meals a day. It always includes utilities, typically housekeeping 1 time a week, laundry 1 time a week, and then others may include cable and, maybe a phone line and internet. Those fluctuate a little bit. They all have transportation. Most have physical therapy on site. If they don't, they come to the facility. They have their care team on site, which people have access to somebody 24/7. And they also have nurse practitioners coming into the community. So there's care needs can be met on weekends, on the holidays, anytime.
It's like full service.
Yes.
It's like a hotel.
Yes, exactly. Resort living.
Yeah.
Senior resort.
Very cool. Very cool. Alex, you want to add something?
And I guess it kind of goes back to, I'm sure this happens to you a lot. Sometimes you get clients that they don't know what they don't know. So it goes back to that in-depth assessment and adding value to, let's say, in our space, having a shared common area is very common, especially when you get with the elderly, that a lot of them say they want to be alone, but at the same time, they're experiencing loneliness being alone at home. So it's like you could always bring up the idea of having a shared common area where they're still going to have their own private room and bathroom, and they can get away and have their privacy. And, believe it or not, a lot of people like that concept and they start looking into it. And it also puts them in a nicer community that they might not be able to afford on their own. Like Graham was saying, they can afford that 1 bedroom, but they can afford the 2 bedroom with a split concept. So it's also kind of showing them that and the benefits of socialization and interaction, which, we're all human. We all need it, basically.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so my next question is, we talked about online services. We're not going to name any, but I know that in my business, there are similar portals that often lack local knowledge and personalized service. Can you explain the difference between a big online service and a local hands-on professional like yourself? What are the differences? Are those the same? Do people get the same service? What do we need to look out for when we compare? Like, why can't I just go online and pick a facility? Why do I need to work with somebody like you? If you can walk us through that, please.
There is a huge difference. So when they go online, sometimes it's as simple as, let's just look to see what's out there, right? Because everything's at our fingertips with our online searches. So let's see what communities are around. And there are hundreds, there are many communities around. You have to narrow it down. But with that said, online, you don't have that local knowledge. You don't have someone there with you, helping you tour, helping you transition. They're not being vetted. So because there's no face-to-face, they don't see what the needs are. They don't see how the person's living. You're hearing one aspect of it, but that personalization is gone. And a lot of times it's a bulk blast to the communities in the area without properly vetting, without saying these are truly what the needs are, or this community truly meets your needs. It's a blast to all of them, regardless of whether it meets the care needs or the preferences or it's in the budget. And it's really a disservice because then that person is inundated with calls from all these communities. And they don't realize what they're getting themselves into by doing that simple search. And it's an overwhelming process anyway. And by being inundated with calls from communities that don't meet your needs just makes it that much worse.
Yeah,
We're like a lifelong advocate. We are there from beginning to end, including resources as those needs change, always.
Everybody's probably experienced the time when you were just kind of checking for an insurance quote or just kind of checking for a home improvement quote or anything like that. And within 5 minutes, your phone is ringing off the hook. It tends to be that way with the online services too. And it's not that they're not giving good information necessarily that's coming down the pipe potentially, but trying to weed through all of that information thrown at you at the same time, especially for a senior, is tremendously overwhelming and can really actually put you off the process rather than simplifying the process by narrowing the field, doing the proper vetting, and getting to the right communities.
So I call this the for sale by owner trap, right? If somebody goes to a for sale by owner directly, they don't know what they're dealing with. And the reason I always say there is a reason somebody is a for sale by owner, right?
Mhm.
When we come in later, we have to clean up the mess because there's disclosures missing, there is value missing, there is so much missing. When you can have the same transaction just with a better service and a smoother transaction, and it doesn't cost you anything, and you have a professional by your side that fights for you and guides you through the process. So I think for you, this is we're very similar in our business. That's why I love that so much. Okay. Alex, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess going back to the healthcare component portion of it, you know, we also take that added step where we're checking behind the scenes as well. You know, the assisted living facilities are monitored by ACA, which is a governing body that makes sure everything is aligned and they're up to date with everything. So we check those records behind the scenes, making sure that they don't have any type of suspended licenses, that there's no type of deficiencies, and it could be anywhere from class 1 to class 3, court cases, that they're up to date with everything. So those are also the added value that we present to them, so that they know exactly what they're getting, you know, into. You know, the facilities are going to come out and say that, hey, we were fined $10,000 3 months ago. I hope that's okay with you. They're not going to tell you that, but we'll tell you what's
And
going
you
on
know
behind
that
the scenes.
you have the behind the scenes knowledge, and I'm also sure you have clients that are in those facilities that give you feedback on how they like it, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Is there, I
Correct.
mean, just asking us, this is not on my script, but is there a way of that sometimes they want to speak to somebody that lives in the facility? Have you made those connections? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So when we're placing more than one person or recently placed, I do like to connect them with some of the others. Of course, they both have to be mutually agreeable to meeting, you know, the new residents. But most of the communities also have a resident ambassador, and that's someone who's lived there for quite a while. They know the community in and out, and they love to show off everything it has to offer. So they do kind of align them as well. And communities do change. So some people will ask me, well, what community do you recommend? It's not what I would recommend or what I like, because everyone's likes are very personal. It's very subjective. So what I like or want isn't a good fit for someone else. So that's why we show them the variety. Where was I going with that?
Oh, but it's good.
Yeah.
I love that you connect them with current residents, because that's like a review for me online, right?
Yes.
Where
Yeah,
people like to talk
absolutely.
about that. Great,
Exactly.
wonderful. So let's talk about after and future planning. So when a senior transitions into a facility, or the family transitions the senior into your facility, what happens to their old home that they're in? And what are the options for families who need to sell a house to help fund their loved one's care?
You've got a lot of options. Obviously, they can put the home on the market. Sometimes assisted living can also be a natural transition from skilled nursing. So they've had an incident, they go to the hospital, they go to skilled nursing. They're still not quite to a stage where they could really truly go home on their own. So they can go to assisted living because it's a month to month type of basis. So they're not necessarily locked into it forever. But a lot of people who end up in assisted living end up loving it. So while they may be a little resistant to it in the beginning, they see the additional benefits of the care, the camaraderie that they can build with people, and then they choose to put their home on the market. They can choose to rent their home. They can choose to do whatever they want with it, but it frees up some of those assets and actually gives them a better level of care, and actually sometimes a much better quality of life.
If I may add to that, there are some bridge loans that can help. So meeting with banking that help seniors is going to be important, and we can help align that too. Like Graham said, putting your place on the market, but also because the assisted livings are month to month, they can do a respite care. So without, most communities require a one-time community fee upon move-in. However, respite care is something where if they're being cared for by a family member, and say they have to be gone on a business trip or a vacation that was planned, for a couple weeks or whatever, they can go into a community. It's basically going into a furnished room and getting those care needs without that
Jessica
commitment.
did for her grandfather. Yes,
Oh,
that's what
okay.
when your mom, sometimes he went into assisted living, right?
Correct.
Yeah, interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's perfect because it meets that need right away. And they're, they have a furnished place. Those care needs are being met. They're surrounded by people 24/7 as opposed to being home and maybe having someone check in here and there. So it kind of gives peace of mind. It also gives them an idea of what it's like and how do they like it? Will this be a good transition? So it's kind of a trial period too.
Mhm.
But
So
other
I'm sure you have
ways,
a lot of those. I'm sure you have a lot of those that are trying it out a few times, and then all of a sudden they're totally sold, right? Because I'm sure that there is people that are being approached by family members with the idea of assisted living, and they're totally against it. But then they try it out for a needed period, like a vacation that the family is going on that they cannot come with, and
yeah.
that's how you convince them that it's a good idea.
Absolutely. Between that, or like Graham said, an extension of rehab, right? A lot of times we see when people are getting discharged too early and it's based on insurance. And this is a way to get that extra rehab, get a little bit stronger before returning home since they are month to month. You mentioned ways to pay. So aside from selling the home, putting it on the market, they also have long-term care insurance pays. If they're a veteran, those can help be a funded source. Also, Medicaid can help be a funded source of income too. However, that only goes towards levels of care, not the room and board.
Okay. Oh, that's good to know. Okay. Rese, you said earlier you were a lifelong advocate for your clients, helping them as their needs evolve. That's a really, really powerful statement. And how does this long-term relationship work in your industry?
So because we're their trusted advisor. So they always come to us as the family helps navigate other needs. So if they need powers of attorney, if they need additional care, say if something changes within the community, say some staffing or there's some sort of change within that, just within the community in general, they come back to us, let us know what the problems are. We help go to them with the community, meet with the executive director, meet with whomever to address the issues, whether it could be pharmaceutical, whatever it is. And we're there on their behalf to say, okay, here's what's going on. How can we help smooth this over? Or sometimes families have a specific idea of what they want. Maybe they want more independent living or assisted living. We don't want memory care, but those needs have changed. Maybe a decline has occurred, and now that those needs are greater than what the community can provide, they come back to us and we say, okay, let's find a better fit. We always look for age in place so they don't have to move and move again. That is a very big deal, but it is customer choice. And sometimes they want what they want, or those needs just aren't there right now. And we're there to help advocate no matter what those changes are down the road.
I love that. I think I have, from my side, all questions covered. Is there something you want to add that I haven't covered? Because I'm not the expert in your field.
I do. So Assisted Living Locators is a nationwide company. Alex, Graham, and I have local franchises here in the state of Florida. There are about 13 franchise partners in the state of Florida, and there are over 150 throughout the nation. Assisted Living
Wow.
Locators has been around for over 20 years, and the model is that criteria, right? That customized service. So really narrowing down those options, providing catering to the individual's needs, helping them tour, helping them transition. So we work not only within our areas, but also with our franchise partners across the state and across states. So as we see a lot of times, the seniors will be separated from their families. And at some point, they want to get closer. We can work with our franchise partners and help ensure a smooth transition across those states. And we do that all the time as well.
I love that you mentioned that, because that's how it works in my business too. If I have people moving from Miami to Atlanta or from Miami to Dallas, I call one of my partners and we just work together to get them moved. So I didn't know
Absolutely.
like that in your business. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I want to bring up one of the chief complaints that sometimes comes up when we're doing either trade shows or things like that is the affordability. A lot of people will look at it and say, oh, geez, I don't know if I can afford that. If you start doing the math, and granted, sometimes it makes has to make a few assumptions, but if they have a mortgage, if they have insurance, which they're going to have here, they have windstorm, they have their utilities, they have their food, they have all those things. If you start to combine them and you actually look at that number, quite often assisted living is either a good balance, and sometimes it can actually save them money depending on where they're at. So it's not necessarily, if you add all the elements that get covered by assisted living, it actually can be more affordable than people actually think that it is.
I love it. So that's why they need to talk to you to plan this out. And I actually do have one more question. So on average, I know everybody's different, but on average, from the moment somebody contacts you until you place a senior into an assisted living facility, how quickly is that? And I'm not talking about the ones that come for, oh, I need somebody to cover the vacation in 2 weeks, right? How long does this process usually take? So how early should people contact you?
I mean, to me, that kind of depends. It's very similar to your industry again, going back, Kathrin. I mean, I've had some that move in as quickly as a week, and some that take an entire 9 months is the longest one that I've had. So it depends on the situation, you know, same as you. I'm sure you got some that are starting to save money and they want to see what's out there, and some that maybe worked with another realtor and they didn't like anything, and then they get to you and they love Kathrin, and within a month they're moving in somewhere. So it all depends on the situation and what's going on. It's a huge variation, at least on my side and what I've seen.
I would also say that if starting earlier tends to be a little bit better, because in the light field of real estate, when you start looking when you're not in a level of desperation, you have inventory to view, you have choices to make, you have things that are out there and available. Whereas if it's left to, okay, now I've had a fall, I'm in skilled nursing, I need to get out at 100 days and I can't go home, so I need a place in 24 hours. It's not like we can't manage that, but your inventory choices are much less. So it's always better to be able to look in advance and say, okay, here are 2 or 3 communities that I know I would want to go to when I get to that stage. And you can help kind of plan that out in advance and say, okay, I'm not going to get stuck in the one that I don't want to go to because they're the only place that has space.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. So preparation is key.
Yeah.
I really love that you shared all this with me today, because it's something that I don't know yet, but that I want to be a resource for my clients. So now that when I have somebody, I can send them to you and pass them on, because I promise my clients also, I'm the realtor for life, but there is a limit. I can't assist them with assisted living. So I'm so glad I have you now as resources. So thank you so much, Rese, Graham, and Alex. We're going to put your contact information either in the comments or somewhere around, depending on where we post it, so that people can contact you. You have email addresses as a resource and phone numbers. So please, if you have a family member or if you're yourself looking to move to an assisted living facility, reach out. They are amazing. They're the experts and they can guide you in the right direction. And what I've learned today is planning for senior housing is a lot like planning for a real estate purchase. Both require thoughtful consideration of budget, location, and lifestyle. And remember, I'm your long-term resource, not just for your current home needs, but for your future life transitions as well. And that's why I work with other experts. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you make it a beautiful day.